Some people build SaaS applications. Some people build mobile apps. I built a useless web app that wastes money on LLM API to find out which one is the best at poker.
Race.
Raise 12 million. Heads up.
40,500,000 all in.
Raise all in.
First, I found a Texas Hold'em map that is written in React.
Shout out to Mikhail MM, because this is exactly what we're looking for.
I will link the original repo in the description because it was honestly exactly what I was looking for. Next, I removed the NPC bots that were written by the original creator and substituted in 4 programmatic NPCs built for each one of the LLMs.
We have 4 AI models.
I chose to go with Meta Llama 3.1, OpenAI's GPT-4o, Google Gemini, and Anthropic's Claude 3.5 Sonnet. I selected these 4 because they're some of the most popular and advanced large language models that are out there right now. After that, I integrated each API.
So first, we will query OpenAI. So all we want is for it to respond by saying hello and don't do anything else. Okay, we hit the query button, we should get a hello. Bang! Hello. We should get a hello from Gemini. Bang! Hello, with a period. Turn it. Click query llama, should get a hello. Bang! Hello.
And finally, we'll hit the query Claude button. What if I don't want to protect my API credentials from attackers? Okay, we might not be able to do Claude 3.5 unless I set up a node server, which I don't really want to do.
I ended up having to move all of the LLM API integrations into a separate Node.js server because Anthropic's public API restricts requests from the browser to protect you from attackers, which is pretty normal, but it was kind of a pain because this isn't something I really cared about or was going to deploy. But regardless, I ended up having to create a second repo, which is honestly not a big deal. You know, I wanted 2 repos, it's not a big deal.
To illustrate that Claude now works with it, I'll do a quick demo. So we're running on port 3001, and we can query Claude. Now, you'll see we get a correct response of hello. Took about an hour, but I was able to migrate everything to a Node.js server.
Next, I wrote out the prompt for the LLMs, which gave context for them to respond to. It explained the buy-ins, the state of the game, the turn number, the number of other players, current pot, current hand, etc. It also included the expected response structure and gave 2 examples, but sometimes 2 examples wasn't enough. Some of these APIs were having issues. After that, I just had to parse the responses and integrate them with the actual gameplay of the app.
So it's been a few weeks of me working on and off on this project in pretty short segments, but I've gotten the app to the point where we have the 4 LLMs hooked up to their respective APIs, and you can advance the turn through a button on the top. So as you can see, we're on Claude 3.5. We can run it, it'll query Claude, and then you can see what their action is and what their justification is. So in this situation, Claude decided to call with a king in hand. There's potential for a strong pair, but the low kicker makes it risky to raise pre-flop. So he decided to call, so he's bet 20. See what ChatGPT does. See, it's querying, and ChatGPT decided to fold because they had a weak hand. Llama called, and then Gemini folds. So 2 of them are in the game. Just keep going. So neither are really good hands. We'll see who wins this. Claude checks. Oh, Llama raised 40. Let's see what Claude does. Claude calls. But yeah, as you can see, all 4 LLM APIs are working. There's just a few small kinks that still need to be worked out, but for the most part, everything is working and looking good.
Once everything was working, I modified the app a little bit to track the standings and make sure that the game could advance without my intervention. I also included a start and stop button so I could still control the flow of the game. But after that, I was able to go and watch the 4 LLMs duke it out over some poker with 0 stakes. Hello and welcome to possibly the most pointless thing you've ever seen, where 4 neural networks go head-to-head in a completely pointless poker match with no concept of luck, strategy, or even reality. Okay, so I actually realized that I'm not a very seasoned poker player and a much worse poker commentator, so it was actually very hard for me to make this part interesting. After recording hours of gameplay between these 4 LLMs, I've come to some interesting conclusions about the playstyle of each model. For one, Google Gemini almost entirely refuses to bluff. It always folds pre-flop even if it has a decent starting hand, usually giving a reasoning along the lines of wanting to preserve chips. I will, however, say though that when it had a strong hand, it usually would raise the pot pretty aggressively. This led to a very low amount of hands won, but usually a few big wins when they did come. Now, playing very conservatively and then absolutely pumping the pot when you have a good hand usually isn't very sustainable because the others will just adjust to the strategy, but there was almost always someone willing to call their bet thanks to this next LLM I'll talk about.
Well, I think I will call you on that one.
Claude 3.5 Sonnet had a very interesting play strategy. Claude consistently had the most wins in the game, but also often had the least amount of money. This is because Claude loves to stay in, often with very mid or questionable hands. This strategy led to a lot of small wins, but also a lot of big losses, because on turns where the more conservative LLMs were willing to pump the pot and play up their big hand, Claude would still be deeply invested in their mid-hand. I guess it just has a lot of self-confidence. Even with hands like King High against a $200 raise and a $1,200 pot, it would still call. I think we could all learn something from Anthropic's Claude 3.5 Sonnet LLM, just maybe not with poker. I found that the other 2 models that we used, OpenAI's GPT-4o and Meta's Llama 3.1, to be more or less pretty rational mid-players. Neither had any super distinguishable play strategies outside of a solid understanding of the game, when to check, when to fold. Both models played pretty conservatively, and neither really experienced major wins or losses, usually being able to float around the buy-in. So, yeah, I mean, maybe I didn't play enough to see their play styles really shine through, but yeah, I didn't think either of them really had great or bad habits in poker. To be honest, none of the players were really that great, but here's how I would rank them. First, I would probably say Llama. Llama had the least irrational behavior out of the 4 and usually made pretty sensible decisions. It usually played its hands well and was willing to accept some risk. Second place, I would give to OpenAI GPT-4o. I don't think GPT played great, but I think it was overall less irrational than Gemini and Claude when making decisions about their hands. Third place, I would have to give to Gemini. Gemini was able to win some very big hands, but it also used an extremely conservative play style that led to a lot of truly insane folds. It constantly would fold pre-flop under pretty much 0 pressure, usually with like pretty decent hands. It was able to win some pretty big hands, so I don't want to hate on it too much, but I think it would really suck in a real match against people, but it seems to do well against the other 3 LLMs. In 4th place, I'm going to give to Claude 3.5 Sonnet. Claude was consistently overconfident, and it would just not fold in situations where it really should have folded. You'd have situations where like Gemini was hitting him with like $200, $300, $400 raises, and he would have nothing, but he would still want to stay in for literally no reason. So that's why I gotta put it at 4. It did win a lot of rounds though, so that's a little bit confusing. I don't know. Like I said, none of them actually played poker really well at all. But yeah, that's it. I probably could have enhanced the prompts for these LLMs a little more, give them a little more context on the game. Also probably could have spent a little more time gathering the data and like refining my conclusions about the LLMs, but you know, I'm just happy to have been able to kind of achieve the essence of what I set out to do. This year, one of my big goals was to finish the projects that I actually start. So I'm pretty happy that I at least did that. Although this project was pretty much useless and provided no one any value, it was still fun to make, and I hope you enjoyed watching. I have a lot of other useless and stupid project ideas that I'm probably going to create at one point or another, so stick around if you are interested in seeing more completely useless project ideas. Thanks for watching.